Okay, so we're learning about tables and how to get some information that we need from the regression equations that we got. So on the last video, we actually entered all the data, got this wonderful logistics regression, and now we're going to get some data out of it. So in the graph, in the y equals, we have the equation stored. I'm going to go ahead and turn on the plots just so that we could see them on there. So I turned on the plots. So now when I go back to graph, here are the plots. Notice how this is the curve of best fit. It's going through most of it and it looks pretty good. So now we want to get some information. So this is a prediction of the future. This is a prediction of, this is the data we collected and we could predict previous and future incidents that'll happen. So the way that we do it is by looking at the table. So what we want to do is we want to do second window to get the top part over there where it says table on there. And then the table start, that's exactly where we're starting. We're going to start at 0. We could put it at any value. We could start at 1,000. We could start at 500. We could start at 2. We could start at -3 or whatever we want. And then this is the change in the table. So delta table means change in table. So that means that every x value is going to go up by 1. So we start at 0, the next one's 1, then 2, then 3, then 4. But if we change this to 0.5 or any other value that we want, if we change this to 2, that means that the first one is 0, then the next one's 2, 4, 6, 8, and then we continue going. And then here is the independent and dependent, and we want to have the auto and change it to the x, but only in the x values, not the y values, because it doesn't work as we hoped it would, but it would work here. When I change the x values, I could ask which ones they are. Now, if I don't do the ask and I have auto, then I'm going to have these values for the value here. So it starts at 0 and it goes up by 1, and then here are all the values that are the y values that are on this regression. Now the 0 is the year 1989, and then 1 year after it is 1990, 2 years after it, and so on. And these are the bombings that are happening according to the word problem that we entered. And so 1654, 1654 is how many bombings were in the year of 1989. So when we go up by 2, if I hit enter on this, okay, so we do second table so that we could look at it. It didn't hit the second on there, so hold on. Now we have to wait for that. Blah, 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 blah. Very good. Come back. Okay, so we do second and then table. And so notice how it's going up by 2s and so on. But what if I wanted to find 1,000, like 1,000 years after 1989? And or to answer a question like what's happening 2 years after the last year, 1994? We would actually have to look at 7. So sometimes if we change it, it's not very helpful. It could help us in some form, but when we change it, the one that is actually the most helpful, I think, in my opinion here, is that I'm going to go back to table set, and I'm going to go, instead of changing the table start and the table, the change in, I'm going to go to change the x values to ask. And when that happens is that I'm going to go back to the table, and notice how it cleared everything off from the X column and it cleared everything off from the Y column. And so what it's doing is that it's at, you could ask whatever value you want. So if I want 2 years after 1994, 1996 there, I could hit enter, and that's what we get, 3,300 and 3,292, because we round down because you can't have partial bombing. So in this year, there was 3,292 bombings. And then, of course, I could say 1,050 years after, and then hit enter, and it's reaching its limiting value, which is 3,350. And so I could put in whatever value in for x, and it gives me the y. We can't do it vice versa on here. So what we're going to do instead is go back to our graph. So we're going to go back to our y equals. And if I want to know how many, let's say if I want to know if there's 2,000 bombings, a y value, and when that's going to happen, an x value, the easiest way to do is to go and put it, instead of y1, we're going to go down and put it in y2. I want to know when 2,000 bombings are going to happen. So if I do that, I'm now going to hit second graph. Sorry, not second graph. I just wanted to graph. Still on the table format. And now I'm going to have two lines that are intersecting. And so this is the y value at 2000, and it's going to be intersecting. So if I find the intersection of my curve and the y equals to 2000, that's going to give me when 2000 bombings actually happen. So the way that we do this is we want to go ahead and calculate it. So we are going to hit second and then calculate, which is actually the trace. So we're going to go to second trace and then the button above, which is calculate. And we're going to go to number 5 and hit intersect. So the intersection is going to be where is the first curve? So notice how it's on the first curve, okay? And then that's the second curve. And this is important just in case there are more curves on there. And then no, we don't want to guess. So we want to actually hit enter and for it to calculate. And then here is the intersection. So when y is equal to 2000, here is the x value. So it's a little less than a year, which would make sense with the data that we provided. So that's what this looks like. And that's how we could get some information on there.